welcome back, folks, to the latest word on Black News. I'm your host, Brittany Jones. It's always good to be back here with you with another episode. So now, folks, President Donald Trump has intensified his efforts to reshape America's historical narrative with a controversial executive order targeting the Smithsonian Institutions. Last month, he signed the order which opposes what he terms as divisive, race-centered ideology, placing the National Museum of African American History and Culture directly at the center of his political agenda. Renowned comedian, impressionist, and actor Godfrey shared his critique of the president's directive. Take a listen.
I hope there's going to be a fight. You need to leave history alone. Black history basically is how they were treated like by white people. That's basically what it is. Black American history is about Black people being on by white people as they were trying to progress. Yeah, and you don't want to hear it, but we have to because you still behave like that. You haven't changed. Now, I can understand if you've changed your attitude. You don't call us anymore. You actually aren't passive aggressive. You stopped redlining. You stopped gentrifying what doesn't belong to you. You stop actually defunding Black schools, keeping Black people in ghettos, mass incarceration. Let's say all of that stopped and there was no more of that. Then I would be like, hey, man, we need to stop complaining. We need to start treating them better. But it hasn't changed.
Joining me now is Marc Morial, civil rights advocate and president of the National Urban League. Marc, I've been to the Smithsonian. You just heard Godfrey talking about it. And the museum doesn't even cover just the weight of what we feel or what we've gone through and experienced as a people. And so, but the idea of erasing America's dark past, what are your thoughts on what he had to say? And then just your thoughts, period, on that.
So Godfrey is a comedian. Love to listen to him. Here's my characterization of Black history. Black history is the complete history of the Black experience in North America. And that history is ugly. It is brutal. It is a understanding of one of the most pernicious institutions in the history of human beings. The removal of people from one continent to another continent in chains to serve as free labor for another group of people who came from yet another continent to a third continent and systematically wiped out many of the indigenous populations. But Black history is also a history of overcoming, of surviving and thriving, notwithstanding that great period of brutality and oppression called slavery, and then slavery 2.0, which was segregation or the American system of apartheid. And it's 3.0, which is this current system of structural and institutional racism that still plagues America in a significant way. So the totality is the challenge and the way in which Black people were suppressed, oppressed, held in bondage, but I think the very significant way in which we worked to resist and overcome. The censorship we see going on, whether it's the banning of books, whether it's an effort to alter history of websites, whether it's erasing Jackie Robinson or Harriet Tubman or Colin Powell from government websites, all of that smacks of some type of medieval, communistic censorship plot and plan. We must resist it.
And sorry to cut you off. I wanted to you made several points there, right? And one of the things that I think you hit home is that no one has the right to erase the work that we've contributed to this country. And so when you look at just kind of getting people a better understanding of what is even happening here, going back to what's happened recently within the past month, right? House Democrats, they're urging Vice President J.D. Vance to intervene and shield the Smithsonian Institution from President Trump's executive action. The Committee on House Administration that oversees the Smithsonian wrote a letter to Mr. Vance, and he stated in part, "This flagrant attempt to erase Black history is unacceptable and must be stopped. The attempt to paper over elements of American history is both cowardly and unpatriotic." And this is basically what you just said, Marc.
Look, I think I'm glad they wrote the letter. I think they should take to the House floor I think they should call whoever it needs to be called before House and Senate committees to answer for this. No group of people, not the Irish, not the Italians, not the Germans, not Jewish Americans, would sit for 1 minute and allow their history and contributions to be tortured, contorted, or erased. They would not, and we will not either.
Yeah, definitely. It's been one of those things where, I think people saw it coming, but to the full extent of which we have experienced it has been another thing to actually see. But do you know, Mark, if there is any ways that even the vice president can actually put a stop to what's happening, though they sent that
It
letter?
can be stopped by the Congress of the United States. They simply need the courage to do it. But the people must bring pressure. It is disheartening, but let me say this.
Yeah.
We need to make a commitment that we will learn African American history the way I learned African American history when I was a child. I learned it in my home. I learned it in the church. I learned it in the community. I learned it from the books that my parents had on their shelves, whether it was Martin Luther King's books or Malcolm X's books or W.B. Du Bois's books, whether it was, going to Emancipation Day celebrations at Greater St. Stephen's Baptist Church in New Orleans, when I was a teenager. We have to make a commitment through our own institutions, through our churches, and we've got to hold our public schools accountable to tell history in a complete and thorough fashion. No community, no community would stand for the elimination of their history or some control on the perspective. If the standard is, well, certain things make people feel bad, then I've felt bad since birth. Learning about the awful terror that was carried out. The standard should not be, does something make people feel bad? Does something make people feel, if that's the standard,
Mm-hmm.
if that's the standard, wow, there's a lot of stuff that ought to be canceled that offends me or that makes me uncomfortable or makes people who have shared my life experiences in the same way. So we have to stand up. We have to speak out. Our museum in Harlem, the Urban Civil Rights Museum in
Mm-hmm.
Harlem, which will open in 2026, is going to be unique. It's not a government museum. It's not overseen by any governmental agency. It is a private museum that will be open to the public. It is a National Urban League initiative. We're putting our 115 years of being one of the nation's leading civil rights organizations on the line and pouring into this. So we have a place that people can learn, study, experience African American history, civil rights history from a Northern experience perspective.
Now, will that possibly have, or could it possibly be impacted by anything this new Trump administration is doing?
We're taking every step to ensure that it cannot and it will not, and we resist. That museum reflects our First Amendment right to tell our story. And we're going to tell our story in a very aggressive and profound, accurate, and authentic way. And we are making sure that no government, not the federal, state, or local government, has control over what we say or over what we do. Now, we will pursue government money, but we will never accept money that has inappropriate strings attached.
And Mark, kind of put a bow on this for us, right? When you have these museums that exist to be able to tell those stories, and like you said, they can't even tell the full extent of the experience. But why is it so important to make sure these places stand tall so
Because
that they're
for a long time, our history was erased, suppressed, twisted, not told. Told from a perspective of those that created the system of slavery, segregation, and oppression. And they told it in an inauthentic way. Look, my fourth grade textbook told the story of slavery being a system where white Americans or white North Americans brought enslaved Africans here to civilize them. That the Native Americans, the indigenous community, they worship pagan gods and they needed to be Christianized. That was what my history book in the South, in New Orleans, in fourth grade said. I remember reading it distinctly. I remember it as being something that burned my inner soul. You know, as a fourth grader in a class where maybe 12 to 15% of the students were Black, one knew not how to express outrage at that. But I tucked it away. And when I got to high school and I got an opportunity to find my voice, when my high school teacher talked about the Civil War not being a war for slavery, but being a war for economics against Northern aggression, my hand went up and I challenged him because that's what my passion and my understanding of history required in that moment, to challenge false narratives. And I challenged that narrative that it was not a war of Northern aggression. It was not a war for economics, that slavery and economics were one and the same, right? Free labor helped to produce crops at an inexpensive level that was sold for huge profits in the global trading market. This sugar, the cotton, the soybeans, the peanuts, the tobacco, the indigo, all got shipped in many respects to Europe and beyond, or shipped to the North to be consumed by others at great profits, and great wealth was created, you know, through that system. And Black people ended up being emancipated with nothing. No 40 acres, no mule, not even an acre, not even a check, not even a house. We were emancipated with nothing. You're free to go. Where will you go? Where can you work? Where can you live? I mean, we've got to understand that history, and you know, if it makes people uncomfortable, get used to being uncomfortable with the truth. The truth is the truth. And this is not about, you know, just trying to shame or blame. It's about telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And I think we have to recognize that you cannot heal unless you tell the truth. You cannot move forward unless history is told in an accurate fashion. And I think many Americans, many white Americans, recognize
In
that.
our last few minutes here, too, to your point, I read an article about there was one woman once. The Trump administration made this decision to start going after these institutions, these museums, and she said that she decided to take a trip, drive several miles to go see the Smithsonian in Washington because she wanted to experience at least what it is right now before they started making any changes to it. And that's them being very aware of the things that are happening. And so I think that's good because that's showing that there is a level of people caring about our stories. But who knows, you know, at this point, what's going to end up happening. All we could do is kind of wait and see. And like you said, still push like you all are in terms of opening the museum that's to come. And can you tell us that date one more time so people can be
I'm just
excited
saying
and ready for it?
people should stand by. We're going to open sometime in 2026. We are working on the date. We think it'll be an excellent sort of punctuation point that will be opening in connection with the 250th anniversary of the United States. So we'll be encouraging people who want to learn about the 250 years of the United States experience to come and see the Urban Civil Rights Museum in Harlem. So follow me at Marc Morial. Follow us at Nat Urban League. We'll be communicating through social media along the way. The headquarters component of our new building will open in September of this year, dedicated in November of this year. That'll be the National Urban League's headquarters, and also the NUL Conference Center, which will be a meeting and convening center and a learning center for us as well. So we have big plans. We've worked long and hard to build, an institution that can help make a fantastic and substantial contribution to the 21st century.
Awesome. Those big plans are needed because we see what's happening in Washington. So people need to make sure they have places to
Mhm.
go and still see our stories. Well, Marc Morial, thank you so much for joining us on the latest word on Black news. We appreciate your time and just grateful to be able to just continue to tell these stories and looking at the things that you all are doing to make sure that our voices are continue to be heard.
Keep it up, Brittany. Thank you.
We want to thank President Marc Morial for joining the latest word on Black news and just giving us a history lesson, if you will. And we know that Trump's first 100 days have just wrapped up, but you can continue to follow us for the latest developments happening in Washington while we keep our eyes on what's happening as it pertains to Black America. And don't forget to catch up on all the other episodes of the latest word on Black news. But for now, I'm your host, Brittany Jones. And until next time, take care.